Cold open today. I just wanted to take a moment to speak to you, the loyal listener of the State of Things podcast and YouTube series. Last Thursday, when I arrived in the recording studio, I was met with an unforeseen challenge, a first in the history of the State of Things. I had to do an interview solo, and you will hear that interview today. I was left alone for the first time this season by my partner in crime, Jaden Ahlrichs, your former student body vice president. So I just wanted to take a moment to forewarn you that it was going to be a solo interview on my part, and share, some of my disappointment that in my time of need, I was left standing alone at the altar. I'm not going to say I haven't let Jaden down over the year. There's been, 2, 3, 4 dozen emails, countless really, that I took forever to respond to. But I don't think anything amounted to this level of betrayal. And so if you feel like you were robbed today of the full State of Things experience, I just want to say it's not my fault. Thank you.
And welcome back, everyone, students and Iowa State community members of the Ames area, and everyone beyond that listens to the State of Things. As always, my name is Jaden Ahlrichs, your now former vice president of the student body, and with me is your former president of the student body, Jacob C. Ludwig. Jacob, how are you today?
I'm doing great. We're no longer in office.
Nope.
I've theoretically have free time. I've managed to immediately fill all that free time, so I don't really, but I'm doing other things. Like I'm experiencing other facets of my life right now.
Wow.
Which is really interesting. I am now a multifaceted person, 3-dimensional personality. I go to different places. I saw a friend that I haven't seen in 2.5 years, like 2 days after I was out of office. So yeah, I mean, you and I both love the student body here at Iowa State. We love this campus, love this university. We love what it represents. But boy, oh boy, did we just sell our souls for a year. So I'm doing great. I'm seeing a whole new side of life. How are you doing, Jaden?
I'm doing great. As you said, you're multifaceted. I have also built upon my character and am now this 3-dimensional cube of things. And so most people like to call it procrastination, but I refer to it as time management because all of my big projects that I had, instead of dealing with throughout the entire semester while I was in office, I was like, what if I waited to do them when I didn't have student government to do? And so this week, the week before prep week here at Iowa State, I've been busy, but it's all because of time management. And so that's a skill that I've learned that student government has taught me throughout the year. But I'm doing great. The weather's warm. I've been going on a lot of nature walks. Ames has a lot of different county and city parks that you can walk along. And so I've been having a great time in this retirement of a life. So very happy.
Yeah, I think first I want to shout out Ames Parks, as a former member of the Ames Parks and Recreation
thank you so much,
Commission.
Jacob, for
I just want to say Ames has a beautiful park system. The county parks are okay, but we really love the city parks. So I'm glad you're getting out there. You're enjoying them on the random days when it's actually seasonable out, instead of randomly dipping back into winter for no earthly reason. But Jaden, I know we're reflecting a lot right now on what it's like to be free, but I would love to take just a little bit to reflect on the 367 days that we spent in office.
367, huh?
Yeah, I know that we took time every week on this podcast to reflect on what we had been up to and the things that had happened. And I know that obviously everyone right now who's listening has listened to every single one of those episodes at least 5 times. And I want to thank you for being a loyal listener, as I know you are. But I think it'd be good to kind of put everything back into context. So, Jaden, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the big things that we got done this year?
Yeah, and I think we've really come to reflect on the past 2 to 3 weeks primarily of our term, just because the things that we set out to do weren't totally easy. I mean, it wasn't as simple as, writing an email and sending it off. Like, we wrote several emails and then had follow-up meetings and all these different things. And so I really want to think back to when we were first inaugurated and sat into these places. We had 2 to 3 weeks in that spring semester to get
Hmm.
things rolling. And something that has always stuck out to me is that very first meeting, my very first meeting chairing the Senate as vice president. One of the bills that passed was one of our platform points, which was doubling the Green Initiatives Fund from 15,000 to 30,000 to allow greater access of sustainable projects to occur here on campus. And that was one of the very first things we did. And then it's fun to see with the composting and the solar compactors, wrapping up here at the end of the semester. Like, I mean, we've done tons of things, but it was really warming to me, especially as an ag student, to know that we came in and then rode off thinking about sustainability and how campus can be improved by that. And I think another big thought that I've had, really reflecting back, is I lectured the number 367 exactly days that we were in office. But a big portion of that, after those first 2 to 3 weeks, we have the summer. And we tried to be active during the summer, but I was in France, you were in DC, and other members of our team were obviously doing big things, making it for themselves this summer. And so it's hard to try to pull together a team. And so we kind of had that lull. But right when we got back during the fall, we got her going. We had our fun, summer 2 months, but then that very first day, because Senate was the second, third day of school. And so, I mean, we came back roaring and hit the ground running. And I'm just really proud of what we've all accomplished, despite that 367, a nice chunk of that being inactive because of summer. But I suppose, as the now eternal 69th student body president of Iowa State, what are your thoughts about this past year?
Yeah, there's uh, obviously a lot of successes, and I think we'll talk a little bit more about some of the big ones. But I'd love to reflect on just a couple of different things. First is obviously the size of some of the challenges that we face here on this campus. Some of them are just, I mean, so far beyond anything that you and I can do as student body president, vice president, and especially in the space of 1 year. I've been really fortunate to be involved with student government since my freshman year, and so I've been able to kind of see some longer projects through, or just kind of, for instance, I think one of the things that we'll talk about later is the Jack Trice Character Award Scholarship. That's been something that I've been talking with people about for the better part of like 2-ish years, but we didn't really have solid work on it until this year, and so that's something I had some time to kind of work on. And then, I mean, there's just the fact that so much of the challenges that we face on this campus come down to a lack of funding, just a lack of money. We need more money for mental health resources, both from the state and federal government. We need more money for, different programs and things like that, and different resources on campus. We need more money for food security programs. Like, there's just so much that needs support on this campus that the university would love to fund. There is so much enthusiasm to tackle all of the challenges that we bring to university administrators, but there are just not enough resources. And so sometimes, we sit down with administrators and we're talking about, like, we need more crisis counselors, we need more this or that. And they're like, we would love to, but obviously there isn't the funding. And so then we turn around and so, you and I had some positive results, with the Board of Regents in the fall. We sat down with them, expressed our interest and desire for more funding for mental health resources, and they made that a priority. Technically, that isn't dead right now, that idea, but based off of, the reporting that we've seen and the conversations that we've had with, people down at the state legislature, it seems pretty unlikely that there's going to be money in the budget for additional mental health funding at the Board of Regents. So, it can be a little disappointing and challenging, and so sometimes you feel a little helpless, but we also made a lot of progress in other smaller ways, and we found different ways to support students through some of those challenges. I think specifically in the food security aspect, we found funding in our own budget to shift towards that issue. And then I think the other thing was just, like I said, I've been involved in student government for a really long time, and being president is such a different job than literally everything else I did before. I was a senator for 2 years, and that's kind of very whatever you want to make it. You can write bills, you cannot write bills. Some senators will be in Senate for years and never write a single bill. I, on the other hand, wrote like 70 bills in my 2 years. And part of that was because I was speaker one year, but I was very active in that way. And I had a lot of internal student government committees, and I was chief of staff, after being senator and speaker. And that was very much, again, just kind of tracking projects and really paying attention to, what's happening internally in student government. And then I had a lot of external activities too, but being president, like, I don't know, I think students imagine that like I'm heading up all these projects and I'm in every room, and I am in a lot of rooms, but I'm not really like in charge of any particular projects. Like I'm kind of just checking up on things and giving direction to people. So, I go to the university administration and I talk with them about things that they're working on, things that we're working on. I create that kind of connection. And then if they need help with something or if there's something big, I take it back to our team and I hand it off to someone else. And so at times it kind of felt like I was just running from meeting to meeting. And so sometimes I'd sit down at the end of the day and I'd be like, what did I do? And like, that's important. Like someone needs to be that universal touch point between the university and the administration. But at times it definitely felt like, the end result here at the end of the year feels really good. We had a lot of successes, but day to day, it kind of felt like maybe nothing was happening. And I think it's just because of, you're running in and out of those meetings. So the schedule was really weird. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting. I definitely feel like now, even though I am busy still, there's way more certainty in my schedule. There's no random pick-up meetings that I have in the middle of a day, no random phone calls, and no crises that I need to be called in to help fix. So yeah, it was definitely, I think, a big year, some big takeaways, but again, I think the impact is undeniable. I mean, I'll just kind of walk through some of the big things. You talked about the Green Initiatives Fund. I think that's going to be a really big thing. We spent, I think, over $70,000 on sustainable projects this year. Some of that was funded by Green Initiatives, some of it from other accounts, but we spent a lot of money on sustainable projects this year. Obviously, the shop contract is huge. $70,000 a year for the next 5 years. It's $350,000 total on food for shop, which will be fantastic to keep their shelves full so that students can have access to free and healthy food. The shop cookbooks and the Good Earth Student Farm programs, those are going to be really awesome ways to supplement, what happens at shop, and the meal kit program. In addition to that, I think obviously food insecurity was a huge focus for us. And I think we had a lot of really positive progress. Do you want to talk a little bit? I know we've talked a couple times about Good Earth Student Farm, but I think it's such a cool thing that they do out there.
Yeah, so just about like 10 miles north of Ames is the Horticulture Research Station, which is where the university and all the professors in horticulture and turf grass are able to go out there and conduct their projects and stuff. But then there's one hoop house that is devoted solely to the Good Earth Student Farm. And what this is, it's a student organization on campus of students that stay throughout the summer, and they grow their own organic food all under this high tunnel. And, throughout the year, as produce is ripened and ready for harvest, those students can take it home. They get to learn about the production of food, how to do it organically, how to companion plant, and then they get to reap the benefits of all that work. But then all of the excess food that can't go around to the students in the student organization, and this is the fun part, it all gets donated to shop. And Sarah Mattingly was their president this past year, and I sat down and worked with her on the bill. And she said, and this was such a cool story of the impact that organization is having, is they would bring hundreds of pounds of produce in a week because this was a very active high tunnel. And the food wouldn't make it into shop, like the physical room, because the students that were here for the summer, utilizing shop, knew that they came on Tuesdays. And so there would be a line out the door, and Sarah would just, out of the big lugs that they use, hand out the fresh produce. Wouldn't even enter the room because students knew and they wanted this fresh produce to take home and actually use. And they just lined up and it was handed out right there. And that blew me away when she told me that. I don't have the exact number of, the poundage that they donated, but it just shows that, we sit in Senate and we fund bills and we never, most cases never get to see the end result. But that was an end result that I'm so proud that we are able to fund and support and hopefully expand for them, because a high tunnel and renting the ground is not cheap for them. And so this will just allow them to be more financially free and independent from having to work with other departments and such.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that it's such a unique program. I think, anything that we can do to provide those basic resources to students is something that we should always pursue. So I'm really excited that we were able to do that. And, in addition to that, there were a bunch of other really cool projects. We had the Menstrual Equity Project, we had the Cyclone Support website, we had the Party Smart tailgates. And there were even some things that we didn't expect to work on, like the daily contract. That was a big part of the year. I was in meetings for a good chunk of the year talking about how we could expand support for the Iowa State Daily. And after a lot of negotiations, we came to a conclusion, and we made a really big investment in the Daily as an organization and as our student newspaper. And so I think there's so many cool things, and there's a lot of different little projects, throughout our cabinet and throughout student government that went on this year. And so I don't want to say that, anything we're talking about today is a comprehensive list. But, if I can take things back again to last spring, you and I ran on a platform of empowering students. And so, and I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but I feel like that was the essence of a lot of the projects that we pursued this year is how could we empower students to succeed at Iowa State, right? There's a lot of different things that you can pursue, but how can we give students the tools to succeed? And so, we provided them with we pursue programs that provide basic resources like food, mental health resources, menstrual products. We at every step, at every project, I think you and I, we're constantly talking about how does this positively impact students and empower them to succeed better and have a better experience at Iowa State. And so I think a lot of fantastic things got done. I think that this is a really successful year that we can, future student governments can look to as sort of a benchmark of, what it means to go out and serve the student body. And I hope that they kind of see this as a really good year to reflect on. And there's also just a lot of leaders from this year who are moving forward into the next year. And so I'm really excited to see what they do going forward. But one thing that we pursued this year that we might talk a little bit about in today's interview is pursuing electric buses at CyRide. And we've had some really positive results there. CyRide's first electric buses are here now. And so, that's something that we've been a big proponent of is expanding getting electric buses here and then expanding the fleet. And then we've also been, CyRide's been looking at adding biodiesel buses.
Yes, I knew about that
to the fleet as well. And so those are two really big things that are happening at CyRide right now. The buses are here now, and they will, I think, start up this summer. And so if you're around this summer, you can ride them. And they'll be back, obviously, in the fall as well. So those are some really big things happening there, and we will talk more about that in today's interview. So with that, I will catch you at the interview right after this producer bit.
Welcome back, everybody, to another producer bit here on The State of Things. Last episode here on Season 1, but as always, you are joined by your fabulous producers, Ethan, Maddie, and myself. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing good. Summer's almost here. I'm super excited about it. Finally getting some warm weather, some thunderstorms. I love thunderstorms.
Storm last night.
Storm last night. It was, which is really. It's also good because I have a friend that's a meteorology major, and he posts about the circulation cloud. It's so fascinating. If I feel like in another life I would be a meteorology major because it actually looks super, super fascinating. So, but yeah, how about you? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Again, week closer to finals, graduation, and going out to get a big boy job. Don't know where that big boy job is going to be,
Hey.
but next stage of life. A little nervous about going out to whatever's in the future.
As one should be.
Yeah,
As one
but
should be.
I'm excited. Little sad to be leaving State of Things and to be leaving student government and everything I'm involved in, but excited for the next chapter in my life. Yeah. So, Maddie, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then I think right now we're about 3 weeks out, almost on the dot from graduation.
Yep.
At the time of recording, anyway. And for me, that means I have almost exactly 1 week to finish my capstone project that we're doing for studio right now, which is kind of not a lot of time to do kind of a lot of work because instead of having an extra work week, we are having a week straight of practice presentations, which means we have to have our
have to have
whole
the work
presentation
done.
like done. There's no extra work beyond a week from tomorrow.
That's a
So-
lot.
Yeah.
That's brutal. But what is college and the design life without one big final push? So that's kind of what I'm going for. But that does kind of lead me into Song of the Week if we do want to start that up.
Oh yeah, let's go for it. Let's
yeah.
go for it.
So as I've explained before, my studio is it's not affiliated with NASA officially, but our whole goal is to be designing stuff to go in the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center, so it's all space themed. And my song of the week this week is kind of a little bit weird because of that. But I am a big fan of listening to instrumental music when I really need to focus.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is an artist called Sleeping at Last, and I used to listen to him a lot. I'm sure you've heard.
Yeah.
And what I've really been obsessed with for the past couple of years from him is this album that is fully themed about astronomy. It's all not lyrical. It's non-lyrical. It's instrumental, and he comes out with songs that are based on specific celestial events. So when we found Puehi, the black hole that we've took a first image of, he's got one about the Gemini meteor showers. So it's stuff like that. But my two favorites from him right now are the two songs he's written about comet sightings. So there's the one about the ZTF comet that came over in February, I think. I didn't get a chance to see it. And then there's the one about Comet Neowise, which was visible in 2020 summer, which I actually did get to see.
That's cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
Which it's not coming back for another 50,000 years. So I feel special.
I'll be there.
That I got
I'll be there.
Yeah, you're going to be there.
Yeah, I'll put it on my calendar.
So I highly recommend, if you need some cool celestial music to listen to, these two songs capture the exact feeling of getting to see such a once-in-a-lifetime unique. And it's just such a strange thing to see a comet. And the music makes me happy, and that's my song of the week, even though it's not a banger. So, yeah.
Nice. I mean, sometimes music can get you in the right mood, depending on what it is that you're doing. So the fact you're able to relate your work to something that you're interested in as well with instrumentals is just really cool.
It's so inspiring. I get so much more work done in this field, especially when I'm listening to stuff that's correlated to the theme.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a correlation.
Yeah. That's really fun. How about you guys?
Well, Ethan, what about you?
Yeah. So I'm gonna drop two songs, different artists though.
Sure enough.
First off, Taylor Swift. Come on. Eras Tour. Come on. You knew I had to drop a Taylor Swift song.
Fair enough.
By the end of this, right? Obviously, Anti-Hero is it's so good. But I found this song. I think it was this morning. Betty by Taylor Swift. There's a studio version of so good. That song. And then Praises by Elevation Rhythm is just a scream at the top of your lungs, high energy. It's so good. Played it for you guys, I think, a little bit earlier. I think it might have been,
excerpt, it's really powerful.
So good. It's such a good song.
For sure.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I'm gonna do kind of three separate songs. One from a past song that I heard last week that kind of led into this. A thing I found last night. And then something that's coming up in the future that I'm super excited about. My past song is one by Charlie Puth. Charlie Puth puts out all of these Instagram reels where he kind of goes through and it's what if there was a song that started and one of the ones he made was one called That's Not How It Works, where he featured Dan and Shay. And listening to that song a couple weeks ago, loved the entire one, but he released a new one last Friday that features Sabrina Carpenter on it. And I love Sabrina Carpenter's voice. I love, the songs that she's done. Nonsense by her is just fantastic. But she released That's Not How It Works. So Charlie Puth released That's Not How It Works with Dan and Shay plus Sabrina Carpenter. and like just all of their voices just together was just fantastic. So
I gotta listen. Because I listened to the one with Dan and Shay because I remember we talked about it.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
were talking about that, and then there was the TikTok, like the thing with Sabrina Carpenter, and everyone was like, "Whoa, what's happening?"
Mm-hmm.
I haven't listened to the one with Sabrina Carpenter though, and I
It's
need to go
so
listen to it
good.
because it
It's
sounds
so good.
Yeah.
It was a lot different than what I was expecting, like from the way that she normally sings. It was a lot
Okay.
different than what I was expecting, but it was definitely it definitely needed her on it. Like I love that version a whole lot. And then the thing I found last night is a whole album. But for those of you that don't know, I'm an unashamed Five Sauce fan. Absolutely unashamed. I love Five Sauce, and they finally released their live album that they did after they released Five Sauce 5 at the Royal Albert Hall, and they called that live session "The Feeling of Falling Upwards," and they did like a 17-track list of like songs old and new, and all of that together, like they had like a 12-piece orchestra, I think that was
Wow.
there, and then a
Whoa,
whole like
okay.
choir that was behind them.
Oh, I love
So-
when artists do that.
So it's like it's all of their songs, but like they take songs like Teeth and Youngblood and She Looks So Perfect. Like they did a version of She Looks So Perfect that was just all orchestral.
Oh my gosh.
And it was just this like all these
that-
violins and these like beautiful choirs behind them while they're singing She Looks So Perfect. And I'm like, who would have imagined
Well, I'm officially a Five Sauce fan now. like,
like
come on.
that,
I mean,
that whole album?
I'm fine. I'm a fan of Five Sauces too. I really like ketchup. Ketchup's my first favorite. I'm sorry. I had to make the joke. Sauce,
yeah.
Five
Oh.
sauce. Yeah. You,
Oh my
I had to make the
That
joke.
took me-
Okay,
took me a
okay,
minute.
okay.
I was like, they have a song called Ketchup.
But as much as I am an unashamed Five Sauce fan, my number one favorite band of all time is called Against the Current. And Against the Current is releasing a single tomorrow called Good Guy. And I've never really plugged Against the Current here before because were on a bit of a hiatus. But Good Guy coming out in the future. I think it's,
That's sick.
yeah,
Yeah, that is really exciting.
yeah.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but I listen to a lot of music on CyRide as an Iowa State student. And due to the fact that our special guest today is from the CyRide, I don't recall her official title. Is it vice president?
She's
of,
the assistant director of
assistant
operations.
director of
I was just
operations.
about to
That-
pull it
I
up.
could remember operations, and I was like, but what's the okay?
Yeah.
But yes. So I think it would be more than appropriate to reflect on our time at Iowa State and our favorite bus routes, the ones that have really been near and dear to our experiences here. Are there any that come to mind for you guys?
I'm gonna start, and I'm just gonna go bold. Blue.
Below.
Fair
Blue.
enough. Wow.
You heard it
Three
here
blue.
first.
3 blue, let me tell you. 3 blue is just, I feel like it was the perfect route for me living in Eaton Hall last year. It got me from my building to my car so I could drive around, drive home, whatever I needed to. But then it also took me to Target. So it's like 2 great things in one route. Passes by Jack Trice Stadium, like beautiful, and it goes like I think it goes through campus, so it's not like it just goes to Target and just goes through like the Friley that area. I forgot what it's called for right now, but it's blue, like blue. That's all I can say.
Blue.
Just
There it is.
blue.
I mean, it works out great. You are wearing blue.
I am
It's
wearing
almost-
blue
it's almost
today.
like you're sponsoring them.
Hey.
Oh wow,
Hey,
Whoa.
blue.
there it
Blue.
is.
What about you?
Well, I live out in West Ames, so most of my routes are kind of centered around that area. But shout out to Red East and Red West, 11 Cherry, and then 12 Lilac. Those are the 3 main buses I use to come to campus and get home. And it kind of depends on like whatever time I'm done on campus. Like I usually am here around 8 or 9 o'clock, so I'll usually catch a Lilac in the morning, and then I'll take a Cherry or a Red home.
So I live kind of close to you.
Yeah.
I've never taken Cherry yet. I've driven to this campus every single day. Or not every, like when I need to,
Right.
but never taken Cherry yet. And I feel like I have to while I'm in this apartment still,
Oh,
because I
yeah.
feel like that's just like a,
It's a rite of passage.
it's
A rite of
we-
passage, if you will.
Hey, we have one spot and it's right in front and it's only Cherry, and I've never. So I feel like I gotta.
I will say, compared to both of you, I know you both have cars, and just the convenience of being able to drive your car on campus, and like it's just a really neat thing that we have a lot of parking spaces and like after hours that you can do. I don't have a car on campus.
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
Right.
I either have to rely on other people like carpooling to take me home, or I just use a CyRide. I mean, it's quite easy. As long as you have your university ID on you, it's just you show that to a bus driver, and then boom, you're on a bus, and then you can pretty much go wherever it is you need to go. So
Exactly.
I like that. But Maddie, what about you?
Oh, yeah. My favorite bus, I think, is actually, well, not favorite, but the one nearest and dearest to my heart is 9 Plum. I don't take it anymore, but back when, I know, right? Back when I was a sophomore, I didn't have a car on campus. I only have mine this year. But I would take that to work because I used to work at the Earl May down in South Ames on South 16th.
Yeah.
And that's the only bus that could get me there. And also, I just think it's really funny because I am not a particularly emotional person, but like when I'm on my own and like I'm really stressed out, I'll tear up a little bit. I'll just like process that. And I didn't have a whole lot of chances to do that except when I was on the bus. And normally, because I had late shifts, I would be the only one on the bus on the way back. And I'd like have the mask on because it was still COVID. So we really we had to be masked up, but I'd still be the only one there. And there'd just be like little tears. And my little spot to just like sit there and process my week was in the back of 9 Plum. And the bus drivers never said anything. They would also have to stop because the way the route was, they had to stop and do like the 15-minute wipe down and restart the route and everything. And then they could take me all the way back up to North Campus. But yeah, 9 Plum is it was my little safe space. And then now I park on North Campus across from Freddy's. So I take the 2 free circulators, Gold and Cardinal, a lot. Not 2 of the 3. The other free circulator is Orange 23, which, if you don't know what that means, it means you don't have to show your student ID.
It's a freshman thing to show your student ID on
Every
a free
time
circulator.
somebody flashes a freshman, I said a freshman ID. Every time somebody flashes their ISU ID on one of the 20 routes, so it's, again, 21 Gold, 23 Orange.
21 Cardinal,
sorry,
25
gosh.
Gold.
Yep.
No, you're good.
You
You're
know
good.
what I mean? Yeah, so you don't have to show your student ID on those. Those are free circulators, but I do believe they stop running around 10 o'clock usually.
Yeah.
Cardinal does.
Yeah, and I mean after hours especially, and I had some issues with this because like Blue I think also stops running around the time.
Yeah.
I use CyRide a lot, like especially like on campus.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's through the Department of Public Safety. I'm pretty sure they do a fantastic job. You just you request a ride, and they show up like 15 minutes later, and they just take you anywhere on campus.
Free Uber.
Free Uber, free Uber.
I went to Uber shopping.
Anywhere on campus. And it was great because when I would have to go get my car at 1 a.m. because you've been there sometimes. So you're like,
Of course, I've been there, me without a car.
well, Maddie, you've been there.
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
CyRide's great. It goes anywhere on campus and through the Greek, most of the Greek area as well, I'm pretty sure. But
That's really nice.
there's some other options too, I think.
Yeah. So the other thing that we also have is Moonlight Express. So I know that I've taken Moonlight quite a few times, and so Moonlight used to just be a couple 40-footer buses who would just kind of go around kind of the main Lincoln Way out into the West Ames area and kind of come back and forth in that kind of combing area. So if you are on campus really late and just need a safe way to get home, Moonlight always runs. Those 40-footers are always going around. And if you use the My State app or the Safe app, you can always look and see where those buses are going. But a new thing that they added is an on-demand service that you can actually schedule for Moonlight Express, one of the smaller shuttle buses, to come and get you on a place farther off campus. So we have an app now that we use called Ride Pingo. And Ride Pingo, you can, kind of say, I'm going to be here. This is where I'm trying to get to. And then they'll help you schedule a ride that will get you to your destination. I know that last time I used Ride Pingo, I was on the north side of campus up in the SUV area. So I scheduled the Ride Pingo, and the shuttle bus took me over to one of the 40-footer stops and said, the bus will be here in about 5-10 minutes. Just wait for it, hop on, and then you can head back to West Ames, where it'll drop me off pretty much right, I want to say 2 blocks away from where my apartment is.
They've got stops.
Really convenient to use. So if you are on campus staying out super late and you don't know how you're going to get home, Moonlight Express is your best friend. I have used it quite a few times staying out super late on campus. And, you know, like, again, not having a car, not knowing how I'm going to get home safe, it's just really nice to have.
Both of those options are also available in the Iowa State Safe app. I'm so sorry. The Iowa State Safe app has, I think, links to both of those things, along with the. Michael Newton said it best in his episode 6. I don't know why I remember that off the top of my head, but like they got the walking blue light. They've got the share your like destination with a friend. Like it's safe. The Iowa State Safe app is truly revolutionary, I would say.
I would agree.
Like it's so cool. I have it on my phone.
Yeah.
I don't walk around campus that much late at night, but if I did, it would be my best friend. So.
Which I just want to make sure that we're giving the right information. Does Moonlight Express stop at 2 a.m.? Is that when the cap is?
I believe so.
That sounds right, because
That sounds right to me.
if I'm thinking about being late on campus, I'm going to be there 3, 4, 5 a.m. I've pulled a lot of all-nighters on campus.
I will say, I think CyRide goes until 6 a.m. So
CyRide, okay.
Yeah, CyRide goes pretty early. I think it goes until like it's like 6 or
Which
7
makes
p.m.
sense.
till like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
And it is again you can only go places on campus, but if say especially freshmen who might not know the campus that well and they're like. Oh, I'm in MWL and I need to get to UDA somewhere. Like, and I just don't feel comfortable walking alone. CyRide, perfect like use case scenario for that. But
But yeah, so if you want more information about anything with the Safe app and anything, check out that episode 6 that we talked about with Chief Michael Newton. But with that, thank you guys so much for coming on for our last producer bit here on the State of Things. Season 1 coming to a close, but do not worry. There hopefully will be more producer bits with your next set of producers, and that'll be a fun time as well. I'm definitely sure of that. We spent a lot of time vetting and picking out our next line of producers to replace us. But
it's gonna be a tough shoe to fill. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm gonna say.
A tough bus to fill.
But anyway, yeah, thank you guys so much. It's been a fantastic year, fantastic season. And for the very last time, I'm going to throw it back to Jacob for his interview with Christine.
Perfect. And with me today is Christine Crippen, the Assistant Director at the Ames Transit Agency, better known as CyRide. Christine, how are you doing today?
Good. It's been a busy day at CyRide, so hopefully got some things done and getting ready for next week.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I think every day is a busy day at CyRide. Obviously, a lot of people to move, a lot of buses to get running. You know, I know that we've gotten to know each other over the last 3 years. I serve on the CyRide board, have had a lot of opportunities to interact with you and the rest of the CyRide staff. But I think, you know, outside of, you know, students riding CyRide, right, most students probably don't know what day-to-day looks like at CyRide HQ. Some students might not even know where CyRide HQ is at. I, for one, didn't know until I joined the board that that's where CyRide was based out of. I was always just like, what's that funny little building on the north end of campus? So could you talk a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like as assistant director?
Sure. So I'm the Assistant Director of Operations. So I'm basically in charge of all daily operation. So it's kind of my job to oversee the drivers, the dispatchers, our management folk that oversee that group, and then also the trainers. So sometimes it's a busy day. Of course, the last year and a half, I did drive a lot, so maybe you saw me out on route. And if I ran into the curb while you're on my bus, I'm sorry. But yeah, I just really making sure that operations is running. We have enough people. Dispatch is good. We don't have anything going on. And everybody's favorite thing, like drug and alcohol, I'm in charge of that. So just making sure everybody's getting their randoms.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've been driving a lot for the last year, a good chunk of the last year. Why is that?
So after COVID and kind of the university started coming back, less, I guess, online classes and more in person, we really had a shortage of drivers. So a lot of management and administration was driving. And so, yeah, people probably saw me almost every day on Cherry Route, sometimes Orange.
What do you think drove that, just kind of lack of applicants?
Well, I think a little bit of it is, of course, a lot of students weren't really here. And so those who would come for part-time jobs, we didn't really have that. And then we get a lot of people who are retired that want to have a part-time job, and CyRide's great for that because you can work only when the students are here at Iowa State. And so if you want, Thanksgiving break or the winter break off, you don't have to work. So it works out pretty great. One of our, out of the last few drivers we've gotten some really good ones, and one's like a retired teacher, so it's like perfect. So if he didn't want to work in the summer, obviously once school was out, then he could take a leave. So it works out great. But then we also had a lot of people who were maybe at retirement age, and I think when COVID hit, a lot of them decided, okay, I'm just going to retire. I don't want to work. And I think it happened everywhere in all industries.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's something that a lot of different people have seen across the economy. But I think even here at Iowa State, there were a lot of professors in my own academic departments that I know just kind of tapped out during COVID. They were like, yeah, this is a good time to step away. But you mentioned that you're the assistant director for operations, and you kind of oversee a lot of those different aspects of what the agency does. And so I think something that might be interesting for students, especially who might not be aware of how CyRide runs, what does a typical day look like for a bus at CyRide?
So a typical day, and I only know this because we just had an awards luncheon today. So our first lane worker, we have lane workers who come in and do cleaning, and they fuel, and they make sure the buses are kind of put away in order so they can be pulled out in the morning in order. Our first lane worker comes in at 3:45 a.m. and he starts airing up the buses and getting them ready to go out. And so most of our routes start around 6:15 to 6:20. And so the drivers come in, they get their bus, they check them out, and they leave the garage. And so really our day starts early, and then it's just really a flow of drivers coming in for their shift and drivers, headed for lunch or leaving for the day so they can go to class.
Right.
And then depending on the day, obviously we have service till 3 a.m. if it's a weekend where we have moonlight. Otherwise, we're usually done somewhere around midnight, 1 a.m.
Could you actually talk a little bit about Moonlight Express? I think that's another kind of service that CyRide provides that is really cool, but then, again, students just maybe aren't aware of.
Right? So Moonlight is a free service to the whole community. We have one fixed route shuttle that kind of runs from West Ames, where all the apartments are, down on Mortensen, into Campus Town. And then it kind of turns around and comes back. But the best part was this year we introduced the demand response software. So you can download the app, which is Pingo, and you can schedule your own ride. And it's like Uber, because I've tried it out. So you just say where you are, say where you want to go, and then it kind of schedules you a time and it lets you know. And then you just watch for the minibus to show up and you hop on and we'll take you from whatever door you came out of to the next door you want to go to.
Yeah, that's a really exciting development, Uber with CyRide,
Right? And it's free. So it's like, don't pay for Uber. You need to ride CyRide.
That's right. So, I know you've worked in the role of assistant director for operations for the last handful of years, but transit has not been the only career you've worked in. You've kind of had some other career paths before that. What drew you to CyRide and your current position?
So in the kind of late 90s, I went to CyRide and I was a driver, and then I became a dispatcher, and then I might have left for the law enforcement world. And then obviously I remained friends with people at CyRide, so you hear about it. I was kind of winding down my career in law enforcement, and Barb Neal, the transit director, contacted me and said, you know what? This position is going to come open. I think you have the skill set for it. You understand transit. Luckily, I kept my CDL. And so, I kind of moved back to transit. we all laugh because at CyRide we always say, well, once you work there, sometimes you come back, and really there are a lot of returning people that leave for a while and come back. So I was one of those.
That's very cool. It kind of could, maybe what do you see as kind of, obviously I think, in the mid 2000s there were a lot of changes, especially around the time when CyRide went fare free for students. But what are some of the big differences that you see kind of then versus now?
Well, I would say the biggest difference is, well, obviously it was a lot smaller back when I drove. I always used to laugh and say, okay, the movie Speed with Keanu Reeves and the bus they drove in that. Okay, that's all the buses CyRide had, basically, were those old GM buses. Mm-hmm. By the way, there's no way you could ramp that thing off anything. So, smaller, we still carried a lot of people, but it was really kind of a little more of a tight-knit group. And maybe I say it's a little different now because before, when I was part of the drivers, it's a different relationship than what I am now, because now I'm admin and higher up. So, but it's larger. There's a lot more employees. We have way more routes. The first time I drove, I was like, I don't. It's like, don't we change colors at the mall? But yeah, so there's quite a bit of difference. Mostly it's really just in the amount of service we provide and how the routes operate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, for a lot of people, they might not be aware of just how old that CyRide actually is. I mean, CyRide's existed since 1976. In September of 1976, it was established as a city agency. Can you talk a little bit about the path it took from, being kind of just a city department to partnering with the university, and then obviously kind of the big changes that have happened in the last 2 decades?
Well, and because you kind of told me this, I kind of looked it up a little more just to make sure I knew. But yeah, in 76, CyRide that's really when the name started, because it was for Dial-A-Ride, which is the paratransit part of our fixed service. And so then, in the 80s, that's when it's really started becoming CyRide that it is today. And you really look and see where ridership just starts ramping up. And I would say even in the 80s and 90s, I mean, we were up in numbers. And by the time you get to, the 2000s, about when Iowa State went fare free for the students, that's really when ridership went up. So, yeah, I mean, when it first started in 76, we were at like 86,000 rides. And now, well, if you take the 2019 numbers, we're up in the 6 million.
Wow, that's crazy. I think one thing to know is just how competitive that is per capita. Could you talk a little bit about some of those numbers?
And I think people are always surprised. I mean, everybody talks about Des Moines and DART, that they're the biggest agency. Well, yes, they are the biggest one, but we carry way more people than them, which sometimes is a little, maybe people don't like to admit that. But, when you look at our 2019 numbers, when we're carrying over 6 million people, that really ups our ride per capita. So, I mean, we're number 3 in the nation. And actually during COVID, I think for a short while, we might have been number 2. We're behind New York. So New York City, San Francisco, and then Ames, Iowa, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. I don't know that there are any other rankings, across the United States where Ames, Iowa is in the top 5, let alone, top 3,
Right.
and kind of fighting it out with San Francisco.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, so, but I think one of the big things that CyRide's had to deal with in the last couple of years has been COVID, just like every other business and agency out there. What do you think was the kind of big impact on CyRide during COVID?
I think the hard part, there was part of the problem was perception about COVID. I think people were scared to ride public transportation, but honestly, well, we have an aerospace engineer in our admin staff, and so he did a whole airflow study, and when you can turn over the air that fast in the bus just by opening the doors, it's pretty safe unless you're like really crammed in with somebody, which no one really was back then. I think the hard part was from going from where, we had full buses, we were constantly moving people to and from campus and around town to no one's riding. I think that was hard, and the public perception, I constantly heard from people, oh, well, why are the buses even running? There's no one riding them. Well, there are still people that need to go places like the hospital or the clinic or even the grocery store. So, yeah, the buses are running. They might have been, kind of empty, but that also makes them safe to ride.
Right. It's still a critical service for people. It's part of their daily lives.
Yep. So I think that's hard, and it's been a little hard transitioning back now that kind of at the end of, as we wind up this semester, I really feel like we've had a lot of people riding and coming back. Maybe the students who really were in school during COVID, you were a freshman or you were a sophomore, you kind of missed out on some of the culture of Ames of riding the bus, and I feel like for a while they didn't ride. But I feel like the younger classes really embraced getting back on the bus and riding the bus to class. So as things get busier, I feel like the drivers had kind of a hard time transitioning back to, ooh, we're really full again. But I think we're kind of getting over that little hump and moving on. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think transitioning to kind of like looking to the future, obviously ridership is kind of continues to be a challenge, as you just mentioned. There's been some rebound, but I think we're sitting around 70 or 80% of pre-pandemic ridership right now. What kind of steps is CyRide taking to try and reintegrate students into the process of riding the bus on a daily basis?
Well, we try to promote it where we can, and obviously, we want to encourage people to ride the bus. It's good for the environment. It gets you to class. Oh, you don't have to get a parking ticket from ISU parking. So, and maybe someone I know from ISU parking always pushes ride CyRide. You won't get a ticket.
Right.
So, I think, I don't know, now I forgot what I was going to say.
That's all right. I think I wanted to move on actually to staffing as well. I know we talked about it earlier. There's been some staffing shortages, and actually you and the whole leadership team were out driving buses throughout a large portion of this year while also doing all your administrative work. And so I think it'd be interesting if you could share a little bit about what a job for CyRide at CyRide looks like for a student, what the pay is, and then kind of what training they would have to go through and how that all works out.
Well, first off, I always joke about this, and not saying because it's 420 today, but I used to say, well, when we'd have like new student orientation, I always be like, oh, you should have your kids come work for CyRide because, well, we have random drug and alcohol testing. So, you can send your child to Iowa State and they'll kind of stay out of trouble because obviously you can't do any of those things when you work for us. So, you can sleep well at night. But all joking aside, it is a good job, I feel like, for students. We do have a lot. Probably the biggest thing for students is if you are one of those people that like to know exactly what your week is going to be like, planned out to the minute, come work for us. Because you pick your shifts, so obviously you can work around anything, class. We've had drivers who are in band, they march and pep band, so they're they have to go to football or maybe they have to go to basketball games, and we try to work around those things. So, and the big thing is really, truly, if you're a CyRide driver, you get priority class scheduling, which I think people don't talk about. But if you have
That's cool.
priority class scheduling, you can schedule your classes before everybody else. Biggest bonus for Iowa State students.
That's a really cool bonus.
Right? There are a lot of people who are like, well, I don't know if I will be able to get this class to graduate. Well, come work for us. You'll have first dibs at it. But no, so if you apply with us, training does take a little while, but obviously we're hiring at $20 an hour, over $20 an hour. You get a $1,000 sign-on bonus. We'll train you to take your CDL. We're actually third-party CDL testers for the state of Iowa now. So we have someone on staff who will do your CDL test. So really cuts down on how much time you have to spend out of the DOT. Like I said, we do alcohol and drug testing. So you do need to be somewhat clean to come work for us. But yeah, after training, then you can set your schedule up. And well, for the last couple years, the schedule's been pretty open. So people could get a lot or as few hours as they want.
Very cool. And what proportion of drivers at CyRide are students?
We have about 30% students. So right now, we have about 135 drivers approximately, give or take, coming up on the end of the semester. So people are kind of quitting because they're getting jobs and leaving here soon. But we have about 135, 26 are full-time, and all the rest are part-time. So we have a large number of part-time employees.
Very cool. I know one of the other cool things about CyRide is, because of the high ridership numbers that we have here in Ames, we are really competitive for grants. And we also have kind of a unique funding structure between us and the city and the student government as well. Could you talk a little bit about the way that CyRide turns that success in ridership into additional dollars for buses?
Sure. So one of the things, and this is what makes it hard when people talked about, well, you should cut back service. Well, we're so efficient. We run everything very tight, so we can get you, across town in a good amount of time. We get you to campus. Since we're so efficient and we move a large number of people, you get extra federal dollars for that. And that's part of that stick funding. And so, because we can do all those things, obviously it works out in our favor since we get extra funding for that. And there's several different categories, like the size of the town and population. So, yeah, it'll be interesting, though, to see what happens with the census.
Yep. Obviously, those federal dollars matter a lot. A lot of students probably don't know that about 50 or 60% of CyRide's funding does come from student fees, and that's how students can ride for free. They don't. It's not free. It's
right.
Pay for it in your tuition. But I think the last thing I'd love to talk about, and I think this has been a big thing that we've been working towards for years here at Iowa State and through CyRide, has been the battery electric buses. And I know now we're also having some conversations about 100% biodiesel. Can you talk a little bit about those two different programs that CyRide's been working on?
Sure. So probably, I want to say in 19, they started looking at battery electric bus. So this project has been in the works for quite a while. And then COVID hit, and then all the disruptions in supply chain, and we finally got our first two battery electric buses in, which we'll probably see them out on route about June, I think. So, but we worked really hard to get those two buses in. We want to evaluate them and decide if, how they'll work within our fleet before we start committing ourselves to, getting more.
Right.
But obviously, because it took so long to get those, we're already working on the next round of buses, as you know. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that goes. But I think they're going to be a good addition to our fleet. It'll be exciting to see them out. We were hoping to have them out on route before the students leave, which we probably won't, but at the open house, you can come ride on it.
Yeah, could you actually talk about the open house a little bit?
Oh, yeah. So our open house is going to be April 29th, and it will be from 11 to 12:30 p.m. We'll have a short program at noon, which you'll be speaking at. We'll do a ribbon cutting. So you'll be able to come in. We'll have one bus at the garage so that you can see it. We're also going to I'm going to run a shuttle from City Hall to CyRide. So if you wanted to park at City Hall, you can jump on the bus and ride to CyRide so you have a chance to ride on it. And then, I don't know, it'll just be a chance to look around and ask questions. And yeah, I think it will be good. I hope a lot of people come.
Yeah, very cool. Well, if you're a bus fanatic out there and you want to go check out the new CyRide electric bus, April 29th, 11 to 12:30 p.m. So yeah, make sure to go and check that out. I think one other thing I'd love to note just real quick, do you talk about the price difference between an electric bus and a diesel?
Oh, yeah. So a regular bus is about $500,000 and some change now. And the electric buses, I think the last estimate we had, they're at about, what do we say, $1.6 million?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of bus.
A nice chunk of change. And then I know this is a lot more of a recent development and there's a lot of parts still moving, but could you talk about the biodiesel plans with REG that CyRide's been working on?
So we've been in communication with REG Chevron, and so our goal is to have about, what do we say, 12?
I think it's starting like 5 or 10. Right?
Oh, yeah, 5 or 10.
Yeah.
So a few buses that will run B100, which is basically biodiesel. And I think the way they describe it, if you don't know what biodiesel is, it's kind of like cooking oil. So although they did tell us don't drink it or eat it, but it'll be biodiesel. And so, of course, it has less carbon emission, better for the environment. So we'll have a whole range of environmentally more friendly vehicles out on the road, I think.
That's very cool. I mean, obviously, public transit is already one of the best ways to reduce emissions, but, introducing the electric buses and now these biodiesel buses is going to be a really cool way that CyRide continues to lead the way in sustainability. But with that, thanks again, and that was an amazing conversation. Always love to talk about CyRide.
Thank you. I really enjoyed being here. It's kind of fun to talk about work.
And from what I listened to, that was a great interview with Jacob and the Assistant Director of Operations at CyRide, Christine Crippen. Now, Jacob, what was your favorite part of that interview? I know you've got a lot of emotion towards CyRide, and so this was your big episode. So what was your one takeaway? What was your favorite part?
Obviously there's so much to love about CyRide. But I think what I really love is, the conversations that we've had about electric buses and biodiesel. I think that's going to be really big, especially with Ames working on the Ames Climate Action Plan. CyRide's going to play a big role in how Ames tries to reduce carbon emissions because per capita emissions for bus riders are much lower than single occupancy vehicles. Electric buses are obviously cleaner than diesel, and actually biodiesel are even cleaner than electric buses because biodiesel buses have a 73% reduction in carbon emissions, and grid energy isn't that clean yet because there's still obviously a lot of coal and natural gas and other fossil fuels on the grid. So it's actually even cleaner to move to biodiesel, which means that, as we convert portions of our fleet to biodiesel, we actually be able to get greener faster. And then obviously long run, electric is going to be a major part of that as well. It's just the grid energy isn't there yet. So I think that's just a really exciting way forward. In fact, the partnership, with REG is one of the first in the country for a public public bus company. like CyRide. There's only a couple other partners that are actually looking at that right now, but no one else has kind of signed that deal yet. So CyRide would be one of the first in the country to pursue something like that. So yeah, I think there's just a lot of exciting things happening there. I think it's such a unique service, ranking third in the country behind New York and San Francisco. And it's such an awesome service that we have here in the Ames community. But Jaden, our listeners will know that, at the beginning of this episode, I sort of excoriated you for leaving me hanging a little bit. And so now that we're here at the end of the episode and people have kind of let that sink in and let their opinions solidify, I will now give you an opportunity to defend yourself. So do you want to talk a little bit about the admittedly cool thing that you were doing during the interview?
Yeah, so my little rebuttal to why I deprived our, listeners of my voice in their ears when they listen to this was I was at Curtis Hall, actually, so just on the other side of campus, but at the very same time was the Global Resource Systems Advisory Board. And so Global Resource Systems is my major that I am here for at Iowa State. And so this advisory board is an external board comprised of representatives from the World Food Prize, several of the assistant deans, and Dean Robeson himself, the dean of College of Ag and Life Sciences, as well as several leaders in kind of the ag industry and where global resource systems can impact. And so amongst all of these great men and women in the room, they asked me, Jaden Ahlrichs, to be the student representative to kind of pursue and portray what that student life currently in the program was, because they really want to think about what's the program going to look like in 20 years. And so every major here on campus has one of these external boards to kind of ensure that the program is going to be up and coming and students continue wanting to be in these programs. And so I was able to, hopefully make an impact on students that'll be a part of the Global Resource Systems major 10, 15 years down the line. So I guess that's where I was. But I do have a maybe not a favorite moment from the interview, but my favorite fun fact is we are Iowa State University Science and Technology. And most people think about research and the student work, but I think that science and technology part, it even goes down to our transportation side of things with the electric, with the biodiesel, all of these amazing things, making, even our transportation here on campus the third in the nation. And just to hoot the horn of cows, we were just ranked the 8th best ag college in the world and the 4th best in the nation. And so, that's Cal specific. But, CyRide's right there. I can't believe that here in Ames, Iowa, a bus transportation system can be a leader in the nation to these types of things.
Yeah, and a thing worth noting there is that RAG is a local company. It based out of here in Ames, Iowa. So now it's technically now RAG Chevron, Renewable Energy Group Chevron, because they were bought out by Chevron a couple years ago. But something cool when the Chevron people came to talk to us about this is, and I might forget some of the specific locations, but they were talking to us, is that Chevron actually has 4 global headquarters. They have one in Texas, and I think in Austin. They have another one in San Francisco. They have another one in Singapore, and the 4th one is here in Ames, Iowa at RAG, because RAG is the head of their renewable energy division. And RAG has strong connections to the Ames community, a lot of Iowa State grads there. And so they are leading in the renewable energy space right now, especially biodiesel and biodiesel engines. And they've got a lot of Iowa State grads, and it's that science and technology education that happens here funnels straight into RAG, straight into Chevron, and now they are leading the way in the industry. So yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think it flows into every aspect of this university. So yeah, there's a lot of really awesome things happening here on campus, but also out in the broader community, and a lot of that is connected to what happens at Iowa State and people who graduate from here. But with that, just want to say thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in for another episode of The State of Things, and we will see you in our next episode.
Our next and final episode, might I add. Bum, bum, bum.
And with that, this has been The State of Things.
Thank you for listening to another great episode of The State of Things, an ISU Student Government podcast original. This episode was hosted by Jacob Ludwig and Jaden Ahlrichs, Produced by Madeline Willits, our executive producer, Sundar Shivraj, our production manager, and Ethan Matthews, our technical director, with special thanks to the staff and facilities of the Student Innovation Center Digital Media Suite. We are always looking to promote student organizations and campus events. So if you have an organization or event that you would like us to promote, please email us at stateofthings@iastate.edu.
The Iowa State University student government was created in 1958 to provide service to, advocacy for, and empowerment of students at Iowa State. To get involved or share your ideas for change, please email stugov@iastate.edu. That's stugov@iastate.edu. Thank you, and roll clones.